A young woman named Ella quietly walked towards an old and abandoned mansion. The moonlight illuminated the decaying walls and moss-covered stones. Years ago, she had spent happy days here with her family, but those days were long gone. The sound of the door closing echoed like a piercing scream, cutting through the surrounding silence. As she stepped inside, the clouds of dust rising from the ground resembled dancing shadow figures. Climbing the stairs, she heard the groaning of each step beneath the wood. She could feel the stories this mansion held. In the entrance hall of the first floor, old furniture was covered in dust. Broken mirrors reflected shattered glass. Suddenly, like a breeze, she felt something touch her hair, yet there was no wind around. She felt a shiver, but it was not from the cold air, but from the presence of another. Upon reaching the upper floor, she heard the closing sounds of doors, like a ghostly breath. But there was no one around. The corridors of the upper floor were filled with silhouettes from the moonlight filtering through the windows. Each shadow played with the darkness. As Ella moved from one room to another, she faintly heard a thin and murmuring whisper, but she couldn't make sense of the words spoken. In a room, in a dark corner, a flickering light of a trembling candle was present. The candle's flickering added a strange atmosphere to the room. Suddenly, she saw a reflection on the opposite wall, a face looking back at her, appearing in the flickering candlelight, then disappearing abruptly. Panic-stricken, she stumbled upon seeing an old painting fall to the ground. The painting, out of its decaying frame, depicted a dark portrait. The figure in the painting seemed to gaze at Ella, but it was hidden behind the wooden walls. With each step, echoing footsteps seemed to follow her. Yet she was alone in the room. The silence around her was deafening. But within the silence, she felt a strange vibration, as if the walls of the mansion were breathing. Behind a door, she heard a faint creak. The door slowly opened, and she felt something emerge from inside. Behind the door, at the end of a dark corridor, an indistinct figure appeared. Its eyes gleamed, piercing Ella's soul. As she moved forward through the corridor, she felt the wall's breath more distinctly. Perhaps the stones of the mansion still remembered what had happened in the past. On the other side of the door, there was a bed covered in years of dust in a dimly lit room. However, a shadowy figure seemed to be moving on the bed. The shadow gave a feeling as if it were reaching out towards her, but she couldn't see what it was. There was only a shape shrouded in darkness. Ella decided to quickly leave the room. But before leaving the room, she saw the shadow figure's hand reaching out towards her from the bed. She couldn't determine if the events were real or hallucinations. Perhaps the mansion's curse had seized her mind. As she passed through the corridors, the walls were filled with whispers under the flickering candlelight. But they seemed to be speaking in a language she couldn't understand. As she moved forward, the corridors narrowed, and she felt a chilling cold. Perhaps the spirit of the mansion was sending her messages. For a moment, she heard a scream that tore through the surrounding silence. But its source was unclear, and it stopped abruptly. She saw a faint light shining from behind a door. She quickly entered the room to find the source of the light. The light was reflected from an old mirror. The mirror, hung on the opposite wall, had an old and worn appearance. Ella stood in front of the mirror and looked at her reflection. But her reflection did not show her face. Instead, the reflection showed a dark figure. As she recoiled in panic, the mirror suddenly shattered, and faces rushed towards her. But at that moment, the lights in the room went out. Ella felt lost in the darkness. But suddenly, a beam of light surrounded her. The light guided her. She decided to follow it and began to move through the dark corridors. With each step, a dark presence seemed to approach her. However, when she stood in a room filled with light, she felt a sense of relief from the surrounding silence. The beam of light pointed towards a table in the middle of the room. On the table, there was an old diary. Ella opened the diary with trembling hands and began to flip through the pages. The pages were filled with old writings, but the last page was blank. Suddenly, a cold breath came from the diary and disappeared between the pages. Ella, filled with fear, moved away from the table. As she moved away, a door appeared on the opposite wall of the room. The door led her outside, into the depths of the mansion's garden, filled with shadows. Within the forest, whispers filled the silent air. But Ella's instincts told her that a call was coming from within the forest. This call was drawing her into its depths. almost like a beckoning. With a mixture of fear and curiosity, Ella stepped into the forest. With each step, a dark atmosphere surrounded her, as if the shadows were closing in on her. The trees seemed to dance with shadows, and the wind whirled around her with whispers. However, Ella continued to walk firmly. As she moved deeper into the forest, a strange melody filled her ears. This melody sent shivers down her spine, yet it also enticed her. Suddenly, she saw a figure emerging from between the trees. The figure, vague and blurry, approached her. However, Ella did not hesitate to understand what it was. When the figure stood in front of Ella, a girl's sorrowful voice spoke to her. The girl introduced herself to Ella and began to reveal the secrets of the dark forest. Ella listened to the girl's stories and understood that the trapped soul of the mansion needed her help. But to help, Ella would have to confront her own fears. Guided by the girl, Ella learned how to break the curse of the mansion. However, this process would test Ella's courage and determination. Ella stepped into the dark forest and began to take the steps necessary to break the mansion's curse. With each step, she faced her fears and the ghosts of the past. But in the end, the curse of the mansion was broken, and the spirits found eternal peace. Ella had accomplished her mission and saved the mansion. Now, the mansion had returned to its former glory, revived by Ella's courage and determination. As Ella left the mansion, she felt a sense of peace and happiness in her heart. She would no longer heed the dark call of the mansion and would bravely confront her own fears. In the quaint village of Willowbrook, nestled amidst lush forests and rolling hills, there stood a mansion veiled in mystery and shadow. Darkwood Manor, as it was known, had long been a source of fascination and fear for the townsfolk. Legends whispered of its former inhabitants, tales of sorcery and dark rituals that had once stained its walls with the taint of malevolence. But none knew the true extent of the mansion's secrets until the arrival of the young and ambitious historian, Amelia Hawthorne. Amelia had dedicated her life to uncovering the truths hidden within the annals of history, and Darkwood Manor presented her with an irresistible challenge. Armed with her knowledge and a fierce determination, she set forth to unravel the enigma that shrouded the ancient estate. Her journey began on a misty morning as she made her way through the overgrown path that led to the imposing gates of Darkwood Manor. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and a sense of foreboding settled over her as she approached the grand entrance. Stepping across the threshold, Amelia found herself enveloped in darkness, the only illumination coming from the flickering flame of her lantern. Cobwebs adorned the walls like gossamer tapestries, and the floor creaked beneath her weight as she ventured deeper into the mansion's depths. It was not long before she stumbled upon a hidden chamber concealed behind a tapestry, its secrets waiting to be unearthed. Dust-covered tomes lined the shelves, their ancient pages filled with arcane symbols and forgotten incantations. As she pored over the texts, Amelia felt a chill creep into her bones, as though unseen eyes were watching her every move. But Amelia was undeterred by the eerie atmosphere that surrounded her. With each passing hour, she delved deeper into the mysteries of Darkwood Manor, uncovering long-forgotten rituals and the dark deeds of its former occupants. Yet, amidst the darkness, she discovered a glimmer of hope, a journal belonging to a young maiden named Eliza, whose tragic tale would come to haunt her dreams. Eliza's story spoke of forbidden love and a pact made with dark forces in a desperate bid to save her beloved from a deadly illness. Bound by the shackles of her own making, Eliza had become ensnared in a web of deceit and betrayal, her soul forever tethered to the malevolent forces that lurked within the mansion's walls. Driven by a desire to uncover the truth, Amelia embarked on a quest to break the curse that had plagued Darkwood Manor for centuries. With each revelation, she grew closer to unraveling the secrets that had eluded her for so long. But as she delved deeper into the darkness, she found herself ensnared in a web of intrigue and danger from which there may be no escape. In the heart of the mansion, Amelia discovered a hidden chamber adorned with arcane symbols and relics of a bygone era. It was here that she would confront the source of the darkness that had consumed Darkwood Manor, a powerful entity known only as the Dark Enchantress. With a heart heavy with trepidation, Amelia faced the Dark Enchantress in a battle of wills that would decide the fate of Darkwood Manor and all who dwelled within its walls. As the shadows closed in around her, she called upon the light of her lantern to banish the darkness that had held the mansion captive for so long. In a blinding flash of light, the Dark Enchantress was vanquished, her malevolent influence purged from the estate once and for all. As dawn broke over the horizon, Darkwood Manor stood bathed in the warm glow of the morning sun, its secrets laid bare for all to see. Amelia emerged from the mansion, her spirit weary but her resolve unbroken. Though the shadows of Darkwood Manor would forever linger in the corners of her mind, she knew that she had uncovered a truth that would live on for generations to come. And as she walked away from the mansion, she knew that she had left behind a legacy, one of courage, resilience, and the unyielding pursuit of knowledge in the face of darkness.